They speak too much. They shout, explain, beg for attention like dogs starving for applause. But I tell you, true power does not announce itself. It is silent. Silence is the language of the gods and also the torture of the weak. When a man refuses to react, he forces the other to confront his own noise. Have you noticed? Fools need your response to feel real. Without it, they melt away. Silence is not absence. It is the cruel mirror that returns to the other only their own insecurity. And in that absence of noise, the enemy writhes. The superior man does not argue with worms. He watches quietly, while the weak plead for a reaction. Say something, they shout. Show yourself, they implore. But every second of silence is like an invisible knife. It opens wounds that no word could heal. Because true silence is not passivity, it is punishment. It is the warning that you are already dead to me. And what is more desperate than being ignored by someone who sees you completely? If you can, endure this kind of truth like this video now. If you can't, leave. Because from here on we will flay illusions one by one. They don't understand. Silence is a war strategy. While they speak, they reveal their weaknesses. While they justify themselves, they expose their fears. While they react, they lose ground. The man who is silent dominates. Because every sound he does not make, the enemy tries to fill with assumptions, and nothing destroys a fool more than his own imagination. He begins to doubt, to fantasize, to project, and thus he corrodes from within. Intelligent silence is not a void. It is the stage where the other enacts his downfall. And then you see, the one who once attacked now hesitates. The one who mocked now is disturbed by your absence. His mind becomes a minefield, each assumption a shrapnel. Why didn't he respond? He thinks. Does he despise me? Is he preparing something? And doubt turns into terror. Silence becomes a shadow that follows him, even when you are gone. Here is the supreme triumph, to cause collapse without a single gesture. If you understand this power, subscribe to this channel now. Here, we celebrate the power that does not shout, but imposes. Now see the opposite, the one desperate for the stage, the man who cannot bear the void, who needs to be seen, heard, validated at every moment. He does not speak, he surrenders. Every word is a cry for relevance. Every appearance, a plea for help disguised as charisma. But excess corrodes. What appears too much becomes a joke. What is over-explained becomes suspicious. And what is always present ceases to matter. The glory of the sovereign lies in calculated absence. The king does not walk among the market crowds. He lets the people imagine where he is. Overexposure is the poison of authority. Every myth dies by the mouth. The wise disappears and grows. The idiot shows himself until everyone sees there is nothing there. Look at leaders who fall. They don't fall because of one mistake, but because they insist on showing they never err. They try to be perfect, transparent, accessible, and end up undone. Because the people do not admire what they fully understand. They admire what they fear, and they fear only what they cannot decipher. Vulgarity is born of familiarity. Do you want to be admired? Then be silent more. Disappear more. Make your shadow an unbearable presence. The throne, my friend, is not kept by speeches, but by distance. The sovereign who descends to the level of the masses to justify every gesture no longer governs. He only begs for respect that will not come. He who over-explains confesses weakness. He who appears too much proves he has nothing left to offer besides himself. And when the I becomes a product, the myth dissolves. The audience that applauds you today will mock you tomorrow, because they have consumed you, deciphered you, and fear nothing more than what repeats. Therefore, I repeat, vanish. But vanish with elegance. Disappear like an eclipse, not like a burnt-out lamp. Absence, when well calculated, creates more impact than 1,000 appearances. The true master does not need to be present. He needs to be felt. His name, whispered, must already alter the environment. His absence must weigh more than the presence of fools. And the man who masters this art never needs to raise his voice. He reigns through absence, and reigns alone. But there is an even more devastating weapon: doubt. The enemy can withstand attacks. He can endure losses. He can even regroup after shame. But he cannot endure the doubt you plant in silence, a question thrown without answer, a lingering gaze. a silence at the right moment. This is worth more than 1,000 accusations. Because doubt does not confront, it corrodes. The enemy's castle collapses when its own guardians no longer trust it. Betrayal begins in hesitation, and hesitation is born from a shadow you cast without uttering a single word. I have seen empires fall not because they were attacked, but because they doubted themselves. The powerful man who begins to explain, to please, to try to maintain alliances out of fear has already begun to die. Trust is not begged for, it is imposed. When the eyes of allies no longer shine at following you, you have already lost, not because they hated you, but because they stopped believing. And the strategist who realizes this does not react with fury. He is silent, he withdraws, and lets doubt do its dirty work. The weakened mind destroys itself alone. Just leave it alone with its ghosts. Doubt is a sophisticated poison. It has no smell, no color, but it has irreversible effect. It does not attack the enemy directly. It makes him question his own solidity. It is a virus that spreads unnoticed, subtly in forced smiles of subordinates, in prolonged silences at meetings, in diverted glances. What was once unity becomes hesitation, and the fortress that seemed unshakable begins to creak from within. No wall stands when the bricks no longer believe in the mortar. And here the past comes in. Ah, the past. This silent executioner that forgets nothing, forgives nothing, sleeps never. A mistake can be understood, an inconsistency, never. The man who reinvents himself without facing what he was digs his own grave with speeches, because the past does not erase. It waits for the right moment to be revealed as contradiction. And when the mask falls, it is not the mistake that destroys him. It is the contrast between what he claims to be and what he was. Memory is the cruelest mirror. The fool believes he can rewrite his story with catchy phrases and stage poses. But time is a collector of truths, and everything he pretended to forget, the slips, the ties, the traces, returns. First as doubt, then as scandal, and finally as sentence, because the world forgives the error committed by courage, but execrates the error covered by cowardice. He who detaches from his past becomes a ghost, trying to inhabit new bodies, and no one follows a spectre, only expels it. Do you want to be respected? Reconcile with what you were. Expose before they expose. Own up before they accuse. The man who masters his own past transforms every mistake into foundation. He who tries to hide it becomes a prisoner of fear, and fear is a scent that attracts predators. The true leader rebuilds himself with the mud of his own ruin. The imposter tries to paint the mud gold and drowns, and when the castle collapses, the last thing heard is the pathetic voice of one who still tries to justify himself. And then we reach the real end. Not the end with fireworks, not the end with scandal, but the silent, irreversible, lethal end. Irrelevance. To be hated is still to exist. To be attacked is a sign that you are still a threat. But the true end arrives when your name is spoken and no one turns their head. When your absence causes no void, when your opinion no longer ignites, when your fall no longer shocks. Only then are you dead, because worse than being hated is being ignored, and worse than hellfire is oblivion. Observe how false great ones die, not with swords but with silence, not with battles but with indifference. The audience that once adored them finds a new idol, a new distraction, a new noise, and what was once king becomes a meme. What was once a voice becomes an echo. Here is the fate of what is built on appearance, to become an emotional statistic, background noise in the theater of the present. Do you want to survive? Then do not seek the glory of the moment. Seek the density of impact. Let your presence leave a mark. Let your absence disturb. Let your name echo even in silence. Symbolic death begins when you need to force memories, when you beg for attention with scandals, when you shout because your silence is no longer missed. Decay does not begin with defeat. It begins with the despair of proving you still matter. You have seen this. The former leader who reappears in interviews, who tries to justify mistakes, who writes books to retell his version of events. A sad theater, because the man who needs to explain himself has already lost the right to be feared, and who is not feared is ignored. Slowly, cruelly, Want to know if you are still powerful? Disappear for a while and see what happens. If your absence causes chaos, intrigue, speculation, then yes, you still inhabit others' minds. But if everything continues as before, understand, you have already been replaced. And the worst, no one noticed. True power is not to shout from the top, it is to be missed when you are silent. The throne is not where you sit, it is where your absence weighs, and few can bear this truth. Symbolic death has no ceremony, no procession, no applause, only silence. But there is a way to avoid that fate. Become unforgettable. And one is not unforgettable by quantity, but by depth. What marks does not repeat, what wounds does not explain. The man who wants to survive symbolic death needs to live like a sentence engraved in fire, not like an advertisement that changes each season. He must choose his appearances as one chooses battles, with coldness, precision, and impact. Only then will your name become a deafening silence. Because the myth does not need to speak, it simply hovers. And the myth, when real, survives even hatred. Look, the great were not forgotten because they erred. They were forgotten because they tried to apologize too much. Human memory respects the firm error, despises the cowardly correctness. No one admires what is over-explained. No one follows one who apologizes for existing. And that is why I tell you, embrace your ghosts, dress yourself with them, transform guilt into a crown. The man who is silent before accusation and faces it with contempt, that man will never be erased, because he does not bow, he imposes. But beware, empty pride is also ruin. It is not about staying silent out of fear of confrontation, but staying silent because confrontation is useless. Your greatness must be so evident that responding would be to demean yourself. Silence in that case is judgment. A glance, an absence, a retreat become verdicts more powerful than any sentence. The world thrashes for a reaction, and you offer only dense presence, loaded silence, elegant contempt. True punishment is to show that the other no longer deserves your noise. See how those who were not answered writhe. Observe how they create narratives, distort facts, resort to ridicule, all to force a word from you. And you remain intact, because absolute power does not respond, it silences. And in that silence, there is more terror than in 1,000 shouts. Every second you do not reply, they wonder, will he destroy me later? Is he already destroying me now? Yes, he is, because silence is the war of the gods. And you, if you understood everything so far, are ceasing to be an ordinary man. Like this video if silence has already been your weapon. And subscribe if you did not come here to be forgotten. I do not speak for pleasure, I speak to cut. Every word of mine is a razor, a sentence, a demolition. But if I could choose, I would be silent. Because silence, when loaded with meaning, becomes unbearable to the weak. They need noise like a blind man needs a cane, not to walk but to pretend he still knows where he steps. Noise is anesthesia for consciousness. Silence, on the other hand, is surgical. It forces the subject to face his own nakedness, without distractions, without excuses, and there is no greater pain than seeing oneself naked before the abyss of one's own irrelevance. Silence is also vengeance, not of one who wants to hurt another, but of one who refuses to continue the theater. The one who gets up from the table and does not return, who does not respond, does not retaliate, does not justify. His absence hurts more than 1,000 offenses, because his withdrawal means you are not even worthy of my anger. And whoever feels that breaks, because hatred is still a bond. Indifference is not. Indifference is the seal of death, and he who masters it, with serenity and precision, has already transcended the level of common men. He has become legend, even in silence. But you ask me, Nietzsche, how to practice this in the real world? I answer, start by refusing explanation. Stop justifying your silences. When they question you, just look. When they demand, just vanish. When they provoke, just smile. Or not even that. The world is conditioned to reaction, and you, by not reacting, break the program. Uninstall the game. The weak collapse before the absence of reply, because they do not want dialogue, they want control, and silence is your declaration of sovereignty. You will witness the reverse miracle. By keeping silent, masks will fall. Those who feigned strength will show despair. Those who seemed allies will either stay silent with you or drift away. Silence is the sieve. It separates those who follow you out of convenience from those who follow you out of truth. And the deeper your absence, the more genuine your presence will be. The current world is a circus of urgencies, noises, and vanities. But you were not made for the big top. You are the silent fire beneath the mountain. And the day that fire speaks, it will be to burn. And now listen closely. The greatest destruction does not come with swords, but with silence. The most perfect ruin is the one that seems to have come from within, but was only provoked by your absence. Let your presence be so dense that the world moves to please you, and let your absence be so acute that it wounds those who dared to underestimate you. Do not waste yourself with explanations, confrontations, shouts. That is for the desperate. Your greatness lies in remaining silent and observing chaos arise without a single finger from you. This is art. Now go, not to shout, but to vanish, not to win, but to be inevitable. Let your name need no echo, because your shadow already commands silence. Let your absence be your loudest cry, and when they ask, why does he not respond? Let the void itself devour them. Do you want to be legend? Then be silent. Ask for nothing, but impose everything. Subscribe to this channel if you understood the value of silence. Share this video if you have already destroyed someone without saying a word. And remember, whoever controls his own silence controls the world.